This is the week 2 vlog, and we're going to pick things off right after the first half of week 1, in which there is a 4-day period between the first and second half. And that time was mostly spent just going to the gym, eating, catching up on sleep, preparation, which is just watching VODs. And we didn't really get a chance to go out, although we did go out one night, and we somehow ended up at a gay club. That was intense because a gay club in San Francisco is like nothing else in the world. Yeah. Well, after that, then I already knew that I wasn't going to be doing the first half of week 2. I wasn't going to be on for the Group A or Group C, I believe. I was only going to do Group B and D, which is Cloud9 and TSM. Fine with me. So I used that time to mostly prepare for those two groups, and we're going to cover all the games anyways, because I did end up watching them. So bam, the day's done, and we start right things off with Group A, to which I went there as early as everyone else. I kind of regretted it because there was no need for me to be there at the time, so I could have watched the games from another place or woken up later, slept some more. Doesn't matter. We'll cover the games. G2 versus Rocks. Obviously, G2 have to go 3-0 to win the game, to have a chance, because they have to beat a tiebreaker as well after. Play the first game, get clapped by the Tigers, immediately shows over for Europe. Alright, well, it was kind of expected, really tough. You don't really get the chance to build momentum to see what the Rocks Tigers are doing. A bit unlucky, actually. No, literally pretty unlucky. And then you have Albus versus Counter Logic, which, man, Counter Logic Gaming, I'm just going to leave it at Counter Logic because, well, they did go 0-2 against Albus Nox. They kind of just won the lanes and just beat him straight off that. They beat him straight up. Well deserved by them going 2-0, and that should be, if you go 2-0 against that opponent, then they should obviously go below you in the standings, and therefore they advance, so good on them. I think it was very well deserved and well played by them. Absolutely, I really was impressed with them, and I'm not going to call them wildcard anymore. I figured it out. We're going to call them a newcomer. That's what we're going to do. Newcomer to the international stage, to the world stage. We're going to save wildcard as a reserved term for teams or players that do poorly. Bad. Shitty. Yeah. And then CLG against G2. Of course, losing to Albus gives them power to beat G2, although G2 was down. They weren't doing too well, but CLG was able to come out on top against them, which, again, just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but they do it anyways. And then the game that I personally loved, Albus Nox versus Rocks Tigers. This is a game that started off pretty well for Albus. It's like, okay, they're doing it. Can they do it? Can they do it? And then the Baron steals, and then the Baron steals, and then more. They can't close. The team fights are looking grim, but they always remain aggressive. Even after the items were even, they always were on the aggro side. Even after Rocks had inhibitors, whatever, Albus was pushing, and it was really enjoyable for watching that. They went with the Elder Dragon sneak. They played some of the Barons later on pretty well, and the team fights were great. I really enjoyed this game. They got to a point where you're watching as a spectator and just like, okay, take away the analyst hat, let's put on the fan hat and go apeshit for this game, and we did just that. I mean, I actually jumped out of my chair when they won because it was such a clutch ending to it. I mean, this game had everything. It had sneaks, steals, barons, inhibitors, ZZ rods, counter pushes, throws, more throws, crazy team fights. They had everything. It was so much fun. So my chair literally fell off, or fell. It just tumbled, collapsed. My chair collapsed as I jumped and screamed, and everyone was so excited that Albus was finally doing it, and they did it. That was a good one. That's honestly probably my favorite game as a fan, as a fan of esports, not as an analyst or any of that part of it. I really enjoyed that game. Unfortunately for them, they did have to play right away, and I'm not going to say that this is an excuse by any means, but they did just go off a really grueling, important game, and now they had to face against G2, to which G2 played well. They finally played a game that they would feel more content than anyone else, but than any other game. It wasn't that immaculate, but they did do well. It sucks that they're only able to do it when nothing else mattered at that point, but I mean, at least they got to win. It feels bad because they definitely did play really well. I had seen some of their scrims, and they definitely were quite a powerful team. And then Rocks against CLG. The only chance CLG had at this was being able to go to actually defeat them. They did not. Had they won, Albus and CLG would have made it out of groups, I think. I think that's what would have happened. Yeah, Albus and Nox would have made it out, and I think, or Albus and CLG would have made it out, and Rocks would have stayed. But Rocks decided that nope. They played well, and they shit on CLG. They won their lanes, and they were able to win it. And it looked like CLG was pretty much just stick safe versus the world, but he would have had to pretty much turn on like triple scripts to be able to win that game because they were focusing him. It was very difficult, and there really wasn't a whole lot of anybody else doing a whole lot. CLG was just not having a very good day. I mean, if you remember the Albus versus CLG game, second game of the day, I think he had a pretty off game with a kind of a weird draft. It's like 3 supports and Lucian. Didn't make much sense to me, but I digress. And then after that game, Rox has to go with the tiebreaker against Albus. Again, they decide, oh, it's time for us to show our true power and make the teams in quarters shit their pants, and they decided to just ass whoop Albus. A little bit scary, because if they're somehow sandbagging and they're out of sync, they're finally able to truck through and really play well, and this team could actually be quite strong, just as expected. And then after that day, obviously, we just go home and just go straight to bed. The days finish like at 12 p.m., especially after a story meeting afterwards. You have to get on the shuttle with everybody, and there isn't really room for anything, considering that the next day you got to wake up, have breakfast, and then go straight to the venue. So the downtime isn't really there. And then day 2, I didn't really get to be here, or I wasn't on this day, so I took the opportunity to do a lot of fan meets as well, and as well as watching the games from the audience, which was a really eye-opening experience. But before that, since I was hanging out with the guys from Cloud9 earlier, I mean throughout the week and earlier, like I don't know if I mentioned Robin, Vital, and ThinkCard, and they got me a little bit into fashion. I was like, okay, you gotta up your fashion game, Alberta. I'm like, okay, I should do it. So I got convinced. So I woke up that day and I decided I was just gonna go shopping, and I did that. And I was roaming the streets, looking for some clothing, and I have a pretty good sense of danger because I'm from Venezuela, so I did kind of develop that there. And there was only one place that I did not dare to walk in San Francisco, and that was a sidewalk that had double rows of homeless and drug addicts. Because the thing is, one side is fine, because you can always just run away to the other side, you can stay away. But when you're in 2 sides, that means if one side grabs you, it's like zombie. The other side grabs you as well. You got nowhere to run. All of a sudden, they robbed your shoes, you got no belt, your pants are falling, your backpack's gone, your wallet's missing. Don't want to be there. So I just crossed the side of the road. Super easy. That was the only place. Everybody was really scared, or mostly everybody was really scared about the streets, but it really is not that bad. In fact, it's really entertaining, because what I did see that was hilarious was not only was there a shouting match that apparently was a recurring shouting match, because Dash had seen it before. It's just 2 people yelling at each other from half a block away, just telling them to get their asses home, and other profanities that are best saved for not the internet. But there is a guy in one of those disabled scooters, the ones that you see really fat people go to Walmart with, charged with double battery packs, or not battery, like car batteries outside of it, so they're just laying there. The guy was smoking what I could assume would be crack. I'm not sure. He had a boombox in the back of it playing some very, very high-paced Latin techno, and right next to him, I mean, he was bopping up and down, and right beside him there was another guy with a dog, and the dog was dancing too, and they're just dancing up in the street. They're just carrying on, and they're going at such a slow pace. And I tried to take a Snapchat of it, but my phone wasn't working. My phone is currently sucking ass, and I wasn't able to actually capture that moment for everyone to relive. But who cares? I would have joined in the dancing just to get myself in the mix. Anyways, and then that day I did go to do the shopping. I got pants, boots, and jeans, belt. But I did learn about salvaged jeans in that kind of world, and that's a whole different culture that I'd never known about before, and apparently it's huge. And now I feel like a more adequate person in that sense, and I'm more cultured. I've learned something, and who isn't a fan of learning all the time? Anyway, so that day I just get to the venue, and I decide that I'm just gonna watch from the stands. And watching it from the stands, I think, is a benefit because you get to see how an audience perceives the show, how they perceive the analyst desk, the casters. And then, I was watching the desk and thinking, all right, who from the audience watches the analyst desk? And the conclusion I came to in a matter of seconds was, okay, nobody watches the analyst desk. Only if you make a meme or have a massive prop is anybody going to actually watch from the ground floor and actually pay attention, because everybody just wants to see the game. Completely understandable. I mean, if I was a fan, I wouldn't really watch it too much. I just care about the games, right? You use that time to go to the bathroom, talk to your friends, get on your phone, take your pictures, take your selfies, whatever. So I also did some of the fan meets in between all the games. I was just walking in and out, taking pictures, and it's really fun because you get the opportunity to make people's days, and I don't think I ever felt that before, but there's definitely a lot of guys that are just like, man, you made my day. They're so happy, and I'm ecstatic to hear their stories, what they're doing, how they got there. And the one that really sticks with me the most is one of the first weeks. In the first week, I had a guy. There was a guy dressed in an Uncle Sam costume. He had a poster with a hotshot tweet, the one that says, if Korea plays like this, and it has a shot at Worlds, and then saying, if you guys have no faith, why are you even here? I took a picture with the guy. It was all fun. And then this week on the Group C games, a girl walks out to me and says, "Hey, my professor took a picture with you." I'm like, "My professor? I don't remember it." Somebody that struck me as a professor. It's like, yeah, like the same guy, the guy with the hotshot tweet. I'm like, whoa, that's cool. And then apparently he was showing it off to the people in his class, and I was flattered. I mean, I was also like, whoa, I don't know if is a class ready for this, but they were. So I thought that was really cool. That really made my day. That was awesome to hear. And just hearing those stories that go deep, so far deep into other people's lives, I think is really, really cool. And anyways, just went back to watch the games, and let's get into it. EDG versus INTZ. Don't let Syndra through. They let Syndra through. Scout just took a dump on his game, just gave everyone balls, and INTZ got shit on the camp bottom lane. I don't know why people don't do this. Just ban Syndra. Don't let Syndra A-Soul. I just say A-Soul. Aurelion Soul is borderline Syndra status, but there are easier ways to deal with. He's more manageable, but still a pain in the ass. Those two, it's the mid laners that handle balls that are really the ones that are a pain in the ass right now. Then we have AHQ versus H2K. Pretty standard game from H2K. They just crush the lanes and try to win the game. And the only thing was obviously the Baron steal from Karma, which was hilarious to watch. Obviously, Vander was thinking that Rek'Sai was there, but it happens. They're still able to win the game because they're so far ahead. It was just a hilarious moment. You could see, like, oh no, can she do it? She's sticking around. She's going for it. Mantra Q gets the steal. Hilarious. And then H2K versus EDG. H2K just says win lane, and then they're able to just crush it. I mean, Ryu has this was the Ryu day. He played really well all day, and it was really cool to watch because if H2K can keep things up being such strong laners, they're actually pretty damn good. If they're able to actually transition those leads into solid mid-game snowballs, they can be a quite powerful team because not everybody has insane advantage gains from laning. And then you have INTZ versus AHQ. That one was pretty straightforward. AHQ just carried on and just won. INTZ looked really disjointed today, so it wasn't too hopeful. And I think that before that loss, they were already out of the tournament. It sucks. But they did beat EDG one time, and that is something. That is better than beating Alliance. I'd rather take I'd rather take a 1-0, a 1-5 finish beating EDG than a 2-4 and beating Kaboom and CLG. Alright, I don't remember what the other team was. Anyways, INTZ versus H2K. Same thing as the previous game. H2K just cruises straight through. And with that, we come to AHQ EDG. And man, this is the game that would decide who would advance. AHQ had such a big lead. They had such a big lead, and EDG was just not sure what they're doing. It's Pawn versus the world. Every time they put Pawn seems to be the only one that just crushes it. And he was doing so well, and AHQ looked like they should have won, but man, they really misplayed so hard. Oh man, some of the team fights, some of the plays were just, you wanted to hurt yourself so that you would just feel pain somewhere else and forget about what's actually happening on the screen. They threw, EDG won, but it would have been a disaster for China had EDG not won. I guess it would have been a disaster for Taiwan had AHQ not won. Who knows? EDG came out on top, and they get to play a tiebreaker against H2K, and H2K just, once again, they gave everyone the dick 3 times. They could do it again, and they did just that. They still had energy in the tank, and they just beat EDG to take first seed, ruining everyone's pick'ems once again in the order, but at least they made it through and gave Europe a breath of fresh air, which they don't need. We actually need that here in Los Angeles because there is smog everywhere. And then after that day, obviously we have a story meeting, and this one was even worse than the previous one in terms of how quickly you have to go to bed, because this day, the next day, the tournament would not start at 4 p.m. It would start at 1 p.m. So what call time, instead of being like 12:30, was 9:30. So you have to be up really, really early, and man, that was rough. But this is the day that I had been waiting for. You know, I got TSM and I got C9 on those 2 group days, and that was a blast. So get there, do your thing, you do makeup, you go straight to the room, you just chat around on the laptop, eat some snacks, whatever. And the first half of the day, I was going to be on with, I think I was on all day with Rusty. Yes, all day with Rusty and Deficio. And I mean, I had never met Rusty before. We obviously met in LA. Really smart guy. I was super impressed. I mean, this guy is smart, talented, handsome, articulate. You gotta give this man a list of compliments. He's got them all. Really cool guy. But Deficio, man, this fucking guy, pulse all the time, every single day. I gotta hear if I want his pulse, and I just like, no, I do not. I do not want your sausage. But he's also cool. Yeah. TSM versus Samsung. If I was doing pre-game or not camp select, I would have seen that Zillion coming a mile away. The reason being, because TSM, because in NA, Zillion is seen like a soft counter to Victor, so he's able to actually, right, it's not a bad matchup, it's pretty good. But the problem is no Victor in NA is as good as Crumbz, and Crumbz just said, nope, I win this matchup now. I think Bjergsen obviously misplayed it, but Crumbz just fucking went off. Insane. Scaring, trolling a little bit. Man, that invade. That blue side, it was like a 4-minute invade for blue buff. And we're like, we could see it a mile away. We're like, okay, don't invade. Your top lane's shoved in. Your mid lane, the mid lane can collapse. Top shoved in, mid can collapse. You know Rek'Sai started top side. She's routing back top. There's no gank opportunity bottom. Just don't do it. Don't go for the invade. Goes for the invade. Olaf dies. Then Kennen dies. Like, oh shit. Oh no. And then Bjergsen dies solo middle. Oh no. Not like this. Luckily enough, the bottom lane for TSM, the last place you would have won, you would have expected to get an advantage. They're able to actually come out ahead. And TSM gets a nice little advantage. You're like, okay, you know, had this blunder not happened topside, this could be a good game. They're able to extend a little bit of a lead. They swap up. You go to the top side, take that turret. All right, rotate mid for the turret defense. Shit. The same thing that happened against Splice week 1 happens there. The rotation from the bottom lane, moving from top to middle. They get caught off because they take a greedy route, and then they lose the mid turret. They lose their lives, and then they lose Baron. Massive off. The worst. And then it's not over yet. TSM somehow manages to win a fight. It's like 5, it's like 2-0 or 3-0. And the rest are chunked. Like, okay, they can just go to Baron, just take Baron, and then Doublelift goes in to try to kill Victor, gets one shot because he still has ultimate, and then the game is actually over. But you know, it's easy for somebody to just put the blame on a player, put the blame on a very specific thing, but it's not black and white. There's so many factors to an actual decision. For example, that blue side invade, you don't know if they called that invade because they said, look, I can collapse into the rumble, or bottomless says Rek'Sai has to come down here, I think we're gonna get ganked right now, or oh, Rek'Sai has to go middle to help, this is what could happen, or you can do it, we can do it, right? Ultimately, it is the player that made the actions final say, but you're kind of like a team. You trust each other. You trust each other's calls. And if somebody says this is a good call and you believe them, then you go for it. So I really don't put the blame on anybody, even though those small decisions are quite game-changing. They lost as a team. And I think that it is unfair to give it to just one or two players, because everybody had a fault in it. You win as a team and you lose as a team. And then you have Splice versus RNG. I mean, what was RNG doing? We do not know what the hell they were thinking. They simply just got crushed this game. I really don't know what happened to RNG on this one. I mean, I'm opening up right now the analysis, the statistics and analysis, but it was refreshing to see Splice be able to play pretty well to their strength. There was one there in particular who got ahead in the top side and was able to just group on Jace and really crush it. And it was fine. It was like, wow, you know, if this Splice had played like this, we would have been in a really good spot in the group. It really would have been a group of death. Although RNG would have kind of relied on RNG playing really poorly, because I think RNG, oh, they got crushed in the bottom lane in this game too. Who knows what the hell they're doing? Next game, TSM versus Splice. If Splice loses this, they're out. Obviously, they have to go 4-0 to have a chance. TSM handles them pretty well. But it's still worrying, because you would have wanted to see TSM come out stronger, particularly because I felt like they were a little bit behind in the early game, and it was only one, they got Syndra, if my memory serves correct, and two, both junglers did a really dumb invade, but TSM or Bjergsen got double buffs off his. So he was able to just like, oh, I'm Syndra into Vlad with double buffs, and then Splice had drafted Vladimir into Syndra. So they let Syndra go through, and the idea is you let Vlad into Syndra, so Vlad just says, we want a team fight, we're not going to have pressure, we're going to be able to absorb the pressure into the side lanes without bleeding too much, and then time to group up, we can out team fight you. But then they also selected Irelia into the Nara top side, which Irelia cannot team fight, and if you put pressure from the middle lane from the roaming Syndra into the side lane of Irelia, and you shit on that Irelia, there is no chance for Splice to win at all. So I think that this game was just a huge blunder onto the draft from Splice. You just can't draft right now a losing mid lane in terms of pressure, and then a side lane that isn't a tank team fighter, a side laner that is essentially a one-on-one, I have to get ahead, I have to split push, because the second they fall behind, they're gonna be useless the whole game. And TSM recognized that, they did it, and bam, they went off. Super cool. And then we have Samsung against RNG. I mean, Caitlyn Zyra against Ezreal Brand. Or Ezreal Braum, of course. What do you think is going to happen? They get shit on in the early game. I think it was turret went down 8 minutes, and Samsung just gave an ass clap in this game. It was like 23-53, I think, game time. They just shit on RNG. I was like, whoa. That was impressive. Although, to be fair, that RNG did play really shitty. I do think that there is a lot of credit to the teams that can dispose of another quickly, right? You can say, oh, give me an opponent that's very shitty. How quickly can you win? And that is an approach that teams use during practice as well. If you're playing against a weaker team, like, oh, we couldn't get a good scrim partner, fuck it, can we win in 20 minutes? And I think that just shows a good ability of being able to understand the pressure points, or the points in the map that are going to be able to give you the biggest net gain right away. And I think that Samsung showed that even though they did look a little, not sloppy, but chaotic, they're still able to just pressure 3 lanes at once. They're able to just dive turrets left, right, and center. And even if they lost people, they were still always getting the objective, the CS, the waves of pressure, and they just handled them. It was really fun. They did the same thing against Splice too. Like literally the same thing. They just whooped them too. 24 minutes in, pushed in through the top side, I think, top or middle, and then they just steamrolled them. There really wasn't a whole lot to say for these games. As soon as that team started losing, it was like, all right, the analysis is out the window here. They're just getting destroyed. There really isn't a whole lot to say. They just show up, they see them, they kill them, and then they take the tower, and then they do it again. And then finally, the heartbreaker. This one was it was literally a heartbreaker. RNG versus TSM. So a lot of people get flack on the desk, like, oh, well, secondly, on the second half of this day, starting with the Samsung RNG, they subbed out Rusty. They brought in LS, who I'd never worked with LS. I had met him before briefly, but and I know he gets a lot of hate, but I just thought he was a nice guy that was really passionate about League, like really, really passionate about League of Legends. So I had no problem with it, and I thought he was very smart. And I mean, I think that while at first his opinions might have seemed very extreme, to be fair, they're all kind of coming true. So I've got no problem with that. If somebody's willing to just go out there and be that confident in what they have to say to the point where it seems arrogant, and then it comes true, that to me says nothing but praise. So I thought that was great. TSM RNG. And what I was saying is that we get flack for predicting TSM, right? TSM was going to win. We said, I think Deficio, LS, and I both said TSM. And had you watched the 2 games before where RNG just got whooped, why would you not have said TSM? Of course, RNG looked like they were playing like shit that day, so it would make sense to say RNG. Or to say that TSM would win, because while they did lose, they did go 1-on-1 beforehand, they did look like a better team than RNG on that day, and that is very important. So that, to me, is already a good enough reason to say why TSM would have been the winner. And it's nothing but an intangible or an actual feeling towards RNG that they would win, that they would be able to show up on this day, on that game in particular, that they would take the game. But I think that they were just holding on to. They obviously recognized that this was going to be the match that mattered the most, so they just said, fuck it, we can just not really care too much about the other ones and put it all on the TSM game, in which they had never played Soul before. They didn't play Soul in those earlier days, even though it wasn't banned. They whip it out in that final game, and then they just stick to their strategy. They put so much pressure on bottom lane. They just said, top's not going to carry. Your top laner is not a hard carry. He's not a hard carry player. Bjergsen's on Rise against Aurelion Sol. Doesn't matter. We have a push advantage, and we are just going to obliterate your bottom lane. And they started off with a Rek'Sai route that finished at blue, the enemy's blue, and just took that, and they just kept going over and over and over. And the one misstep that TSM had, they completely capitalized on it and gave Uzi on Ezreal a triple kill. And from then on, they just went putting pressure all over the map. And while it wasn't the cleanest, it was really good by them. Like, they really executed the strategy well. They played it out, and I think Uzi had 45% of the team's damage by the end of the game. And it was just a little bit in the fault of the compositions, I feel, because TSM definitely did not have a way into the fight. They had Ryze, Jace, I think it was Ryze, Jace, Rek'Sai, and Braum with Lucian. So there really isn't a way for them to actually engage onto the likes of Aurelion, Sol, Ezreal, Elise, Poppy, and Nami. Like, you just can't engage onto that. So RNG had a really nice composition against them. They played it well. And the one semblance that looked good was when they flanked. When Bjergsen found a way around the backside in the inhibitor defense, they were able to push and get an ace, get some objectives out of that. But it really felt like that game was just Bjergsen versus the world. I don't know. The score line just looked like it was him trying to carry everybody and everybody having a really rough time, which is a little heartbreaking to see when you see like one player just be doing so well by comparison to his teammates, which it happens. And again, you don't want to put the blame on anybody, right? RNG won as a team. They executed their strategy, and TSM did lose, was unable to defend properly on their end as a team. And then the final one of the fights that looked like TSM had a shot, I think that they got over eager, got into range of Poppy ult, and after that, it was pretty much game over for them. But to be fair, they should be kicking themselves in the. I mean, they should be not upset at this game, but upset at the Samsung one before, because it shouldn't have come down to that game, because the one that was truly within their reach was a Samsung TSM game, the first one of the day, not the RNG TSM one. But obviously, hindsight is always going to be more attached to the most recent event. And it sucked, right? TSM didn't do too well. They're out. I think we went out for a sad dinner that day. We just had a shitload of steak, just so much steak, and they gave. I didn't know this before because I usually get a sliced carrot with your steak. Sometimes they give you sliced carrot, but this place we went to just had a fat steak. This was like a 10-inch fat carrot. Although to get there took like, man, it was like a 30-minute walk uphill the hills of San Francisco. I got a nice little glute workout. And then, of course, the next day, Cloud9 versus the world, because they were the North American hope. And by that same notion, Flashwolves was also the LMS's hope. And everybody felt like, oh, you know what, that's kind of unfair. They're going to get a free win out of IMA because they had to sub in Athena or Baimi or Athena, I'm not sure, because it depends on who they wanted to start for mid lane. And they were able to actually win with a role swap of Lee Sin Alistar. Flashwolves, they should have had that game, and they fuck it up with a Baron sneak. They were clearly out macroing IMA. They were able to just rotate top, trade tier 1, tier 2 for a tier 1, which is huge. Do it again on the other side. But they didn't do that. They decided to go for a sneak, which I know a lot of people criticize the sneak. You don't have to do it. That's fine. But I'm not going to go nitpick far enough to say you don't do the Baron call. I'm just going to say how you do it right. And the way that they do it right is by recognizing the point in which you're committing to the Baron and committing everything at once. And what that means is the Malzahar and Elise were doing Baron by themselves, and they know, and the Tam Kench and Jin are keeping everybody away from the mid lane. They open up with Curtain Call into the Sivir, but they don't have control over River, and they're willing to use Teleport on Poppy to secure that Baron. At any point, if you're trying to sneak a Baron that early, you want to. Nothing else matters. You want the Baron. You don't need the TP does not matter as much as the Baron. So what Flashwolves should have done is that they should have TP'd Poppy in before they see the Lee Sin. They should have TP'd Poppy in as soon as the Baron is like at 5k. That is a health that is low enough for you to commit. And what that does is you TP the Poppy in and you have her there be early so that she can play zoning tool for anybody on time. Because what happened is that the Lee Sin showed up with a Banshee's Veil. I mean, it's really hard for Elise and Malzahar to deal with that. Had you had Poppy beforehand, you could have peeled you could get the Banshees off, punt him away, and you commit, and then you can get out. You can also utilize Tam Kench, just have him ult Jin right into the pit so that everybody commits and everybody gets out. IMA is going to be hesitant to take a fight into the Baron, especially because they don't have a path to engage. They have only through the ramp and through the actual mid lane or the banana brush. So Flashwolves can just retreat topside. You have Malzahar to exit. You have Poppy to just lay shit. You have Jin to lay things to disengage. There's a lot of ways to get out of that situation. But they greeted out and refused to burn everything to commit to the Baron, and they get paid. If you're not willing to go all the way, the other team is, and he's going to give you the dick all the way. And that's what IMA did. After that, there was no looking back. IMA just rolled with it, and they did fine. Although the Lee Sin was really shaky. I did not like that Lee Sin play. And then Cloud9 against SKT. I mean, Cloud9 looked pretty good this game. They put Meteos on Olaf, a Smoothie on the Alistar, which is what you would have expected, Smoothie on Alistar. And they first picked Ryze for Jensen. Again, if you look at Jensen's stats, I think that his best champions are actually the ones that throw balls. Syndra, Ori, and Ryze seem to be his best ones as opposed to all the other ones. Fun little fact. I mean, there's a reason why if you look at the Cloud9 logo, it looks like 3 little balls on top of each other. That's a trifecta. Anyways, I think that the strategy from Cloud9 was a little shaky. They really could have punished SKT way harder and found a way to win on bot side, because I think SKT had, I'm going to say, Zyra Jhin against Ezreal Alistar. And they were able to burn summoners on the Zyra, and they didn't camp them immediately. I think that C9 should have just camped the shit out of bottom over and over and over. They had Kennen, they had Alistar, they had Olaf, they had Ezreal. You can just dive that bottom lane so many times, but they didn't do it, and it was a little disappointing because I think that Cloud9 was just toiling too much on the roaming aspect. While it did work at times, I would have really liked them to just constantly go bottom lane and just obliterate that lane, and they didn't, and SKT won. But man, SKT had a comp with no tank, and once again, like, this team just looks like they can play this weirdest comps that are so difficult to execute, but nobody else can do it. It was Jace, Lee, Victor, Zyra, Jhin. No tank. Pretty much just the squishiest guys. If you catch them in the CC train, they're all dead, and they pulled it off. Really impressive. Really impressive. And nobody can do that. I mean, how do you go into a draft and prepare against them? They're like, oh, they're gonna play the toughest shit to execute. They're gonna play the toughest comp and execute it. That is rough, because they literally had pressure mid lane, pressure jungler, pressure top lane, pressure jungler. Mid lane pressure is going to be coming there like post 6 or post first buy, and then a crushing bot lane. So picking those really tough to execute comps gives them a huge advantage in the early game in terms of the laning, and you feel constricted as Cloud9 playing into that, and you feel like the only advantage you get is just when you simply group and utilize your AoE and your CC to catch them off guard. And then Cloud9 against Flash Wolves. What the hell, man? I don't know. Cloud9 just kind of dropped the ball. The Ryze, I don't know why they didn't take Ryze for Jensen right away. They're perfectly fine to just take Ryze, because they first picked Nidalee, and it's like, what? Why are you doing this? I feel like Midas is better onto the tank junglers right now. He's been playing tank junglers all split long. Just give him a tank jungler. But he played Nidalee. I mean, I'm obviously not going to put the blame on him. I just would have rather have seen the Ryze first pick, like they did against SKT, so they can have another ball-throwing pressure mid laner that can scale pretty well. Flashfuls took the Ryze into the Victor matchup and just fucking went off. Maple had a triple kill. There really wasn't a semblance for Cloud9 to get back into this game, I feel. Flashfuls played really well, and they won. Well deserved for them. SKT then plays IMA, and what a shitfest. Man, this game was hilarious, which I forgot to mention. I was on the desk this day with Spawn and Deficio, and the previous night we had all gone out for that steak dinner. I think that's one of the reasons why I know a lot of people on the desk and even on cast get a lot of flack. Like, oh, I would have rather seen this. I would have rather seen them. I don't watch the desk anymore. It's not fun. It's not funny. It doesn't entice me. Well, a big part of a good segment like that with multiple working parts is the synergy, and it's very difficult to build synergy with people that you don't know and that you don't work with before. And because us three are friends and friendly with each other, not to the point of going out for food and drinks after, it makes it a lot easier to be comfortable on the desk, to be yourself. And when you're yourself, that's a personality that people want to see. They want to see you have your own opinion. They don't want to see that PC cookie cutter shit that everyone knows how to say. And that's when the segment becomes more enjoyable. And I felt like this day was one of those, that it's really easy and it's really casual. And it's kind of like an intimate conversation between friends that have high knowledge of the game. And just to give you more specifics, if I'm on the desk with somebody that I've never met before, that I've never been there before, I'm going to feel uncomfortable in saying, all right, can I interrupt this person in the middle of their point? Right? If I laugh in the middle of their point, if they're saying something funny, and then somebody else takes over, are they going to feel offended? Are they going to shut down during the entire thing? You don't know that. Whereas if you know somebody before, you can say, I can just laugh here, we can have a joke, we can throw in a jab here, we can throw in a joke, I can push this far in terms of making a a roast at him, I don't know, a burn, whatever. And that helps so much. And when you have desks that are constantly switching over and over and over, you never get the chance to really build that synergy. And because there's no downtime as well to actually hang out and talk to each other, it's harder to build that synergy as well. And I think that's one of the reasons why as the days will go on, the desks will be better. Cast, whatever, I don't know for the cast, I just know for the desk. But for the desk, it will be better because you're with people that you know on a more intimate level, and therefore you can feel like you can be yourself easier, and that shows on camera. Anyways, SKT versus IMA. This was just when IMA decided to pick Kha'Zix, Nautilus, and SKT picked an all-AT comp. I mean, IMA built an Aegis into a team that has no magic damage, right? They had Jace, Olaf, Varus, Caitlyn, Karma. Jace, Olaf, Varus, Caitlyn, Karma, yeah. The only magic damage that comes out of them is the Varus W and Karma. Why do you need an Aegis for that? And I guess Jace E. If you want to, do you want to count Jace E and W as magic damage? Sure, but it made no sense to have an Aegis in the support. And honestly, while the Kha'Zix was hilarious to watch, he even got a Baron steal. If you actually pay attention to the way Kha'Zix was played, it was dog shit. It was awful. That Kha'Zix should not have. That was not a good Kha'Zix. But it was enjoyable nonetheless. And also the build sucked ass. You're going Black Cleaver into a comp that has one tank. Nobody's buying armor on that team. You don't need to shred base armor. You would have rather seen either a Hydra, a Death Dance, anything really, just not a Black Cleaver. But SKT played really well. And again, just like the previous game, they say we want to play a comp that nobody else will play in this tournament. All AD, no CC, no actual stuns is what I mean. They don't have a single stun on that team. An actual disable is just a root from Varus. Like, holy shit, and the root from Karma, holy shit, that's so hard to pull off, and they're able to do it and make it look easy. That's what's scary about this team, that they're playing these comps and it looks like they're just having fun. They're wielding the sword that nobody else can do, beating them and saying, alright, it's your turn, show me what you got. It's like they're a higher level and they have access to the better sword. That's what SKT looks like, which is really, really scary. And then we have Cloud9 against IMA. Man, this was a worrying trend, if anything. Cloud9 was unable to close this game. They had a nice lead, but they just struggled so much that it got to the late game, and through just shot calling, I guess. I mean, through a siesta, fiesta, whatever you want to call it, IMA was almost able to make it back. Rice, Sivir, late game, super OP, but Cloud9 pulls through. Luckily, man, I was really worried for this one, but you know what? They get a win. And now all they need to do is count on SKT to beat the Flash Wolves to make it into the tournament. And I mean, if you're going to count on anybody to take a win, why not off SKT? They do just that. They handle the Flash Wolves nice and easy. Again, with a comp that is fucking hard to play. Nobody else can do it, and then they do it again. This team is insane. I think it looks like SKT could win the whole thing again. And then after that day is over. Can't do the fan meet because there is... Oh, no. The day is over, and then we have the group draw. And to sort all the teams out. I think that everybody was a little struck at first with the movement from the Albus Nox from SKT into H2K, but the rules were stated. That's how the rules were before, blah, blah, blah. Just a misunderstanding. I mean, personally, I don't give a shit if we see the teams in the same group play themselves within before, not in quarters, but in the semis. I don't care about that, but that's the rules how they are. I know that other sports do it. Not a big deal at all. That's just the way that they are. The groups seem pretty straightforward to me. Looks like Korea, Europe, Korea, and then Korea, and then Korea wins again. So hopefully it doesn't go out like that. Haven't really been able to predict anything, but using the results from Worlds is a much better indicative of how games will go as opposed to previous research and patches and things, and you don't really get to see their international playing and actually see how they're playing. But after that was done, we did the group Worlds Tonight with Kobe and Shocks. That was super easy. We just recapped a couple games on the day and talked about predictions for the semi or for the quarters, and that was fun. And then we went out. Some of us we went out for dinner that night. That was a lot of fun. There's a game that somebody from across you has to buy a drink, or not from across you, that you buy a drink for the person to your right, and you just do like that, and that was pretty fun. I got to try a Cosmopolitan, an old fashioned. That was a fun game because you get to try drinks that normally you wouldn't order yourself, and I really enjoyed that. And then we just went back, drinks at the bar, and day's over because you got to pack the next day. And the next day was going to Chicago, which I am going to Chicago, in which wake up like at 7 in the morning, I think, pack the bags. I'm sitting on like 4 hours of sleep. And I know that nobody else has, I don't think anybody else had a flight with me. So just pack my shit. Luckily, I was 6 pounds under 50 pounds on my bag. So it's really easy to, so I wasn't overboard even though I had bought a lot of extra things. But when we get to the airport, when I get to the airport, because I'm going solo, I load onto the plane, right? I'm sitting there waiting, having my morning pizza because there was nothing else to eat. A morning pizza of egg and sausage. Not bad. Not bad at all. But we get loaded. I'm like, all right, you know what? I can't wait to sleep on the plane. This is going to be awesome. I'm going to pass out on the plane, have a sick time. I'm sitting there with my earphones. I discovered a new band, which I absolutely love. It's a British band called Glass Animals. So good. So it's modern, and if you watch my stream, you'd know that I pretty much like a lot of old music, and I have a difficult time finding new one that I really enjoy. This is not one of them. I love this band. Would love to hear them. Really good stuff. It's like indie, trippy, rock, alternative. Pretty much my jam. Anyways, I'm on the plane, and then I hear an announcement, and people start getting off the plane. I'm like, what are you doing, dude? The plane's about to start. Sit down. And then I take off my headphones and I just hear, oh, we need to check the plane, so we're going to need you to unload or get off board. We're going to need to find a new plane. So what happened, apparently, is that they forgot to check the engine thoroughly, and there was a bird in the plane. And then they needed to find a new plane for us to be in, which... You know, the first thing to me, if I'm running a plane check, I'd probably want to check the engine more than anything else. That's just me. So we had to get off board, and I found out that Spawn was also in the plane. So we were just sit there half zombie mode because both of us were on very little sleep. But regardless, it was a nice little thing. I spent all that time just on the laptop writing shit down for preparation. It's like I'm not going to sleep on this on the way out or on the wait time because they said, "Oh, we'll let you know if we found a new plane in an hour." And they're like, "Hey, we found a new plane, but it's going to take another hour." So we got on that some hours later and slept a little bit, just listened to music. Although I had a bit of a headache after that because I needed to sleep. And then we got to the hotel, and then here we are. What a place. I think the hotel has a wonderful view right now. I can see a ferry unloading. There's a Ferris wheel. It's just gorgeous. I've been to Chicago before, but for a very select amount of time. I didn't get to do anything, and this was definitely a little bit of a new experience. And I'm going to be on for the first set, which is Cloud9 versus Samsung. I'm going to be on for EDG versus Rocks, and I'm going to be on for H2K Albus Nox. And I think I'm going to be on that much because I'm not going to New York. So it's going to be really easy for me to just be like, oh, well, putting me to work. I can use these times to just, shine through and have an excellent analyst desk. And I think that what's going to be even better is that they're actually using formations that we've used before. So one of them I'm going to be with think Papa and Kobe, which I was with Papa earlier. I've been with Kobe before, and it's easy, right? Because if you're friendly with each other, you can joke around, you can make points. It's a lot of fun. You can even have props, as it's been done for years in the past. So it's really great, and I'm looking forward to that. And then the other time, we also have the same segment that we did on the day 4 or day 8 of group stage, which is with Spawn and Deficio, which is really great. I mean, I think that those two guys are some of the hardest working people in esports, which is really inspiring, to be honest. I mean, they're both relatively young, I guess, for commentators in esports, but it's really a cool thing to see that you working with coworkers that are, not just fun to hang around, and the whole, not just fun to hang around, but they're also really good at what they do, and it's always nice to be around that, because then that brings you up, and then hopefully you can do the same to bring them up, and it's just a good thing in general. And then there's also another day with Kobe and Deficio as well, which is the same thing before, right? Been on the desk before, hardworking, enjoyable thing, and I'm really looking forward to that. So I'm spending a lot of the time here doing preparation for those days to make sure that I can put on a good show, and I try to work on the whole, try to bring in some more comedy to the desk, which I think I did. I improved on that for the second week, for the week 1 second half, but not as much as I would have liked to. But I think that if there's a progression, a little bit of a climb to get to where I wanted to be, and I think that it's doable. And I think that the inclusion of props really emphasizes that. So just sitting there and brainstorming of what could make a good segment, a good fun time that everybody can enjoy, is what's gonna really separate it. And that's pretty much it. I mean, when we go into the gym with Crepo, there's 24/7 room service in the room, so I literally have no reason to leave. And then I also really enjoy warm weather, so I keep my room at like 80 degrees Fahrenheit, just because I enjoy the warmth. So it's very easy for me to just want to stay inside at all times, especially since this room is super nice. Well, I hope this vlog was somehow entertaining, insightful, and that it uploads quickly, because the internet here is pretty weak. I'll see you guys next time.